Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
This is an update to a story I did a while back. Mike sent me a note. Ottawa businessman who says he burned $1 million to thwart his ex-wife is back in the news because he held a fundraiser for his legal bills. Gary Dimmick wrote this for the Ottawa Citizen. The man is an Ottawa businessman, and he told an incredulous judge that he burned $1 million in cash so his ex-wife wouldn't get any of it, and he was set to have a fundraiser for himself to pay his legal bills. So it was a benefit concert, and he wrote on Facebook that a small fortune is required to bring an end to my legal travails. Any contribution you could make in this hour of need would be greatly appreciated, adding that the folks who couldn't attend the benefit could also send him money directly. Now, keep in mind that this is a guy who went into court and said, I had $1 million in cash and I burned it. Can you people please send me some money? I need money. The man's 58 years old, was sentenced to 30 days in jail because the judge said he might want to rethink his claim that he burned $1 million in cash. Now, he's a businessman and failed mayoral candidate. He sold properties and businesses behind his ex-wife's back, according to the allegations, then withdrew $1 million of it in cash and claimed in court that he burned the money in 2 campfires in 2019, burning $750,000 in one and $250,000 roughly in the other. He's long defied a court order to file an affidavit about his finances, notably where the money went from the secret property sales. Because his financial affairs remain a mystery, the court has been unable to figure out what he owes in child or spousal support. He was paying neither in 2020. Now, this is an interesting thing because that paragraph contains a second element. The first element is, he says, I had the cash, I burned it. So the court said, fine, file an affidavit that says that. And apparently it says he's defied a court order to file an affidavit. And so the question is, if he's telling the truth, why won't he put it in writing and sign it as an affidavit? And so it might be that there's other things he doesn't want to disclose, but apparently that was something that he came into a conflict with the court on. He also defied a court order not to sell his properties because there was a fear he was trying to keep the proceeds out of the court's reach. Oh? He then did, in fact, sell some assets to his former accountant. He has further defied a court order to pay the court $300,000 as a security. His explanation that he set fire to the missing million was revealed during a contempt motion before a judge back in 2020. He told that judge he withdrew a total of $1,050,000 through as many as 25 withdrawals from 6 bank accounts and had receipts to back up his claim, but no longer had the cash. So where's the money now? The judge asked. I destroyed it. You've lost me. What do you mean? The judge said. He then rambled and spoke of anxiety about a relationship with his daughter. And the judge said, can I back you up a bit? When you say you destroyed it, what do you mean? The man then said, I burnt it. To the tune of how much? The judge asked. In total, about $1,039,000, but he later changed that number to $1,050,000. And the judge says, how does destroying over $1 million advance your child's best interest? And the businessman admitted he didn't record video of the bonfires of cash, had no witnesses, and didn't document it in any fashion. And that, of course, is the real problem, I think, for most people, is that he would have had to know that this day was coming. If, let's assume for a moment that he actually did withdraw the $1 million in cash, take it out and burn it. He knows that somewhere down the road, someone's going to go, what happened to that cash? Where'd it go? I burned it. No one's going to believe him because they're going to think, oh, he buried it. He hid it. It's in shoe boxes in his rafters. It's someplace. Nobody burns $1 million. So if he actually did burn it and knew this day was coming, easy enough to prove. You video it. You have a cell phone, don't you? And so when people say they saw things or did things that would be very, very easy to document but forgot to or didn't think that they could do that with their phone, you kind of go, really? So the judge said, you understand that's hard to believe. And the man said, yes, I do. He said he burned the cash out of frustration with divorce proceedings. And right now, by the way, there are angry viewers hammering away at their keyboards going, Steve, I kind of sympathize with the guy. I understand what he's driven to. Have you ever been through an ugly divorce? That kind of thing. And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the man's not frustrated. I'm not saying that he doesn't have a reason to be frustrated. He might be going through the worst divorce ever. It might be hell on earth for all I know. My point simply is, if you go into court and say, I lost something, I destroyed something, it's gone, and there was a really easy way for you to document that and you didn't document it, well, I think at that point it's kind of on you. So he said he's frustrated. He said, it's not something I would normally do. Oh, really? You don't get up every morning and burn $1 million just to get your day started? I'm not a person that is extremely materialistic. A little goes a long way. I've always been frugal. That's why my business lasted for 31 years. The judge didn't buy it. And he ruled that it was crystal clear that the man has very clearly and deliberately set out to thwart the court and the proper administration of justice. And yes, thwart the court is the words the judge used. Before the businessman was escorted out of court in handcuffs in 2020, the judge added, you are making a mockery of this court and its process, something I will not allow. You are conducting yourself with intent to deliberately and willfully frustrate the proper administration of justice. More particularly, I find what you've done to be morally reprehensible because what you claim to have done willfully and directly undermines the interests of your children. Judge then reminded the man that he, like all parents, has an obligation to provide for his kids. Instead, you have set out to do damage to your children's future by destroying on purpose the financial wherewithal that you had to provide for their best interests. Judge said he had to send the man to jail to send a clear message that court orders must be obeyed. Meanwhile, the man's fundraiser for legal bills came after a court order enforcing severe financial penalties. In an order, the man was told he'd have to pay $2,000 a day to his ex-wife until he complied with the court orders to file a full and honest account of his financial affairs and notably where the $1 million in cash went. So the judge is not saying, I'm locking you up till you cough up the $1 million. He's saying, I'm locking you up until you comply with the court order to file a full and honest account of your financial affairs. So the accounting, an honest accounting, is something that someone can do right now if you're willing to tell the truth. Sit down, write it out, have somebody come by, notarize it. Boom. So it was $14,000 a week for a man who'd long hidden his financial affairs from the court and his ex-wife. And the man has not responded to calls about the fundraiser. And by the way, right now, there are some people out there who are going, I'm kind of pulling for the guy. I'm rooting for the guy. It's fine. However, you do understand that if he thinks he's getting back at his ex-wife by doing this, do you really think she's looking at this going, wow, I never anticipated that he'd pull such a smart maneuver? She's watching this going, okay, it'd be nice to get the money, but he's being fined and thrown in jail and things like that. On some level, she's looking at that going, wow, didn't think we'd get to this, but quite frankly, when you're fighting with your ex in court and one of you goes to jail for a little while, ask yourself who won that transaction. So the judge in the 2020 ruling said he didn't think that the man burned the money, let alone $1 million. He said on the record, I don't believe you. I don't trust you. I don't think you're honest. I urge you to get in compliance because the $2,000 a day is going to run up such that you lose everything. A lawyer representing the man's ex-wife told the court the story was just nonsense and noted that while the man now claims to have no income, documents show that he has around $9,000 in expenses monthly, which somehow are getting paid. It makes you wonder also. And so I've actually known people, I've been told this by several people. Steve, if I got a divorce, I'd sell everything. I'd get rid of everything I own. I'd become broke, and she'd get nothing from me. And you look at that and you go, okay. I know that's how you feel. Whether you'd actually go ahead and do it, I don't know. Here's a guy who decided to actually try and do it. But you get rid of all your stuff. Did you give it away? You just sell it. Okay, now you got money. Oh, you took the money and you burned it. Okay, where are you living? Are you literally living on the streets? Or are you living someplace where you're paying rent? How are you paying rent now? And so it's difficult to actually make yourself penniless and broke and yet still have a lifestyle similar to what you have right now, which requires money. So they'll figure this stuff out. Now, don't get me wrong. The guy could have taken the $1 million, put it in a Foot Locker, taken it out into some provincial forest someplace and buried it 8 feet under where no one will ever find it except for him. That's possible. That's possible. And so somewhere down the road, this guy, if he manages to escape the legal entanglements, might be able to go dig the money up and go live someplace happily ever after. Although he's 58 years old right now. 58 years old. He's a young man. Don't get me wrong, he's a young man. But how much more turmoil do you want in your life? And so I've known people who've been married, okay? Sometimes I got to give you a premise before I start going off on a story with a conclusion. But I've known people who've gotten married. I've also known that some of them have gotten divorces. And I've known people who were very, very happy after they got a divorce. I've known other people who were very, very disturbed and distraught after they got a divorce. And they remained that way. And I'm just letting you know, this is my personal observation of life. Your personal observation might be different. I'm not saying this is a rule. I'm simply stating that from my own personal observations, this is the conclusion that's occurred to me as something I've seen with my own eyes. The people who get the divorce and move on are generally happier than the people who get the divorce, turn around and are bitter about the divorce and about their ex, and they drag that bitterness with them as they continue on with their lives. I was at a party, birthday party actually, 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. Remember this vividly. And I knew some of the people at the party, but not everyone. So I sat at a table with two people that I knew who they were. And it was two people who had been married. They're married now, but they were married previously. And they were complaining about their exes. And then a couple other people at the table chimed in. So there was 4 people having a discussion about their exes, how much they hated their exes. One woman spent a disproportionate amount of time describing her ex-husband's hairline, how little hair he had, things of that nature. And so we're going on and on about this. I'm just sitting there watching this because I don't know these people that well. And finally, some woman made some extremely over-the-top comment about how much she hated her ex-husband. And I go, hey, can I ask you a question? Yeah, what's that? How long have you been divorced from him? It was like 12 years, 10 years, something crazy like that, double digits. And I looked at her and I go, 12 years ago? She goes, yeah. And I go, and you're still this bitter about him? And she goes, yeah. And I go, and you still think about him every single day, and when you can, you unwind by doing this about somebody that you divorced 12 years ago? And she looked at me like I was an alien. She's like, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, I'll bet you anything. If you could go back 11 years, 10 years ago, and have a talk with us, by the way, your life will be a lot better if you simply learn to just put that behind you and move on. Now, if you got kids with them, you may have to interact with them and stuff like that. But my point simply is to be carrying that kind of emotional baggage 12 years later, to the point where it's ruining somebody's birthday party. It was a birthday party. And there's 4 people at a table complaining about their exes 12 years later. So this guy here says, I was so upset with her that I took $1 million in cash that I had and I burned it. Presumably because he didn't want her to get whatever portion may have been hers. And as the judge points out, a portion of that, of course, would have gone to the raising of the daughter he has with her. So you can spite the mother all you want on some level, but to spite your own daughter, that's the problem. And so all the judge is saying is fill out the affidavit and sign it and get it notarized or whatever's necessary in Canada and present it to the court. We'll move forward from there. Won't do that, though. It makes you wonder why. So that's the big question. Gary Dimmick wrote the story. Mike sent me. Thanks a lot from the Ottawa Citizen. The Ottawa businessman who says he burned $1 million to thwart his ex-wife had a fundraiser to pay for his legal bills. And like I said, that's a bit of a stretch. I burned the last $1 million I had. Can I have some more? Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Sometimes the road less traveled is less traveled for a reason.